Hello, people of the internet. It's your boy Kishuishi, and today I'm just gonna be yapping. I'm gonna be yapping about something that I've recently realized as I go about my day to day and just hear the different discourse, different conversations amongst people between like men and men, women and women, men to women, and women to men. You know, all the different types of combinations of different types of people. You know, blacks, whites, yellows, oranges, browns. I think I got most of the colors of the different people. Purples, you know, some you ever meet someone that's just so dark, like it's as if they're a different shade of dark. Like it's not even just black, you're like purple now, especially if it's like cold outside. Now you're yeah, I'm just rambling on. I'm trying to get to the minute marks so I can actually, you know, start using the words that I like to use. But yeah, today we're going to talk about how I think in the modern day, we are conditioning men and women in opposite directions. Better yet, it would be as if men and women are switching places. And the reason why I decided to even think about this video is because you ever seen those like videos or like little posts on the TikToks or the Insta of the grams where it's like a guy doing something that is more leaning on the feminine side, like, oh, a dude who wants plastic utensils at a restaurant, something like that, or a guy who wants to wear gloves to take out the trash instead of just using his bare hands and washing it after, stuff like that. Or like, you know, a more extreme example, a grown-ass man not wanting to change the fucking tire of a car. Like, yeah, no, that one's kind of valid. Like, bro, I believe everyone should know how to take a tire off a car. I understand not having the strength to necessarily undo the lug nuts or like to do the jack. Like, I understand that part, but like, come on, bro, replacing a freaking car tire. Yeah, situations like that. And you'll see like a caption or just a comment saying, who's gonna be the men? And then you can see the opposite. And the opposite for some people that want to be very subversive, you know, they want to be sarcastic, you know, add a little satire to the mix. And they'll like women who are more on the aggressive side. Like I saw a reel the other day. I'm not gonna put it on screen, but I'll just describe it because I don't know if I can even show it on YouTube without having this video being nuked. But it was a girl drinking alcohol and she got very aggressive because I guess her boyfriend, I'm not sure who the guy in the video was, but he like took the bottle of alcohol from her that she was drinking, and she just turned around and started quite literally beating the shit out of him, and he was just standing there taking it while holding the bottle. And someone commented saying like, oh, who's gonna be the woman? Or like people are saying, is that a man? That type of stuff. I feel like in our current day, we're conditioning both young boys and young girls to be the opposite of what is predetermined by their genders and their gender roles. And I can say that personally in my life, the way how I was raised growing up, I was raised with a single mom, even though like, you know, I did have a dad. I saw him every once in a while, you know, promised to take me to the beaches on the weekends. Whether or not we went to the beach, that was a different story. We did go to the beach eventually, but not every time he said we would. But this video is in me trauma dumping on y'all about my childhood. But yeah, growing up with a single mom and just generally being around a lot of women. Like at one point I was the only boy in the house of like 5 women. So you can see like living in an environment like that, my personality developed the way it kind of did. But at the same time, you know, whenever I would hang out with the guys in my grade, that's when I would be like the troublemaker somewhat. In terms of like what I say, not what I did. Like I would never do anything that would bring harm to myself or other people, but best believe instigating. Yeah, I was instigator's final boss, and I think instigation is like a very feminine thing to do because it's like you're just adding fuel to the fire. That's one trait I can say about myself that is very on the feminine leading side. And also like, you know, just generally being upfront with like discomfort instead of like talking about, or not even talking about it, but like just telling someone to stop doing a specific thing that annoys me. I'll just complain about it before I'm just like, yo bro, stop doing that shit. I'll just be like, oh, you do this, like that type of shit. It's like, oh bro, you know, all the time you be doing. It's like, no, if it's something that bothers you, just say, nigga, stop doing that shit and move the fuck on. And I think, you know, not necessarily saying like the way you're raised is gonna be the way that you stay for the rest of your life, because best believe if I stayed the way I was like 2-3 years ago, oh my god, I would be single and very miserable right now, and I can say that objectively. But it's just generally like, I feel like since society is the way it is in terms of like trying to encourage not only people in the black community, because this was something that was mainly a thing that plagued the black community, like separating the father from the mother and making like the household basically a welfare child. Like, yeah, it's a welfare dependent household, you know, your mommy's mommy and then daddy's the government, you know, that way. But I feel like since the black community has been such a successful experiment with that, they've now moved the goalposts and now trying to include everyone in that. And now we have a lot of feminine men and a lot of masculine women, and it takes a lot of work to undo that programming both ways, because it's very easy to be a feminine man, you know, expressing your discomfort about stuff but not actually doing anything about it. But hey, at least you can express yourself. You know, being a masculine man means just taking the problems and, you know, not talking about it. But you see, the thing about being a masculine man, putting in the effort and not really talking about your problems, but putting the effort to fix it, is significantly better than just sitting around talking about your problem. Because like, while you can make the argument that, yeah, having a conversation or like just expressing your feelings about something that's bothering you or like a situation you're in is quote unquote the first step, I feel like that's just a feminine approach. But like, actually just shutting the fuck up and just doing what you need to know you got to do, and not really going to people and saying like, oh maybe, or like discussing it. Because I feel like when you have discussions about things that, like having a discussion about something you're gonna do with your life, and like from the perspective of, hey, this is something that I'm going to do, like I'm already in the process of doing it, but I want your input and how to continue doing it, that's great. But being on the fence and not deciding whether or not you want to do it and going to someone else to talk about it, like you're on the fence about it, I feel like that's a situation where it's like you're more likely to just not act on what you need to do, because the thing that you are bringing up is something you need to do, like you do it. But if you're on the fence about it, I feel like it's a very feminine thing to like speculate and just contemplation just in general. I feel like is a very feminine trait that we see. But to say it in the inverse too, like I feel like I feel like just the way society's going, they want everyone to fall underneath that, where it's like, okay, you know, mommy's mommy and daddy's the government. Because you see with like not even just black families or the black community, but like white feminists are like the main sponsors for this whole, oh, I don't need a man in my house, I can do everything by myself. Which, you know, I would understand it if like a lot of these white women who are like, oh yeah, I don't need a man, this and that, actually like stayed in their lane and actually didn't do like, oh, you hate men, all right, do true, okay, don't fuck them, because you know what happens when you fuck dudes and you're a girl? You get pregnant. And if you're a pregnant woman and you hate men, more than likely you're going to be by yourself. And that is the product. A lot of single women or single moms that end up just raising a children on their own, they end up creating this dynamic where it's like you raise your son to be softer, to be more feminine, to be more inclusive, which, you know, ideally speaking, it makes sense. It's like, oh yeah, you know, the more aggressive child, I should teach them to be nice and soft so they don't hurt people. And then, you know, with like making this balance, you know, with a young girl, you know, I'm a woman and I went through a lot of bad stuff in my life and I'm struggling my entire life. I'm going to raise my daughter to be able to deal with this type of struggle. And what they don't understand is teaching women or raising women with the mindset of like, hey, your life is going to be full of struggles, so you should be prepared to take on that struggle. Yes, it's kind of counterintuitive in my mind, because like everyone should know how to deal with stress and how to deal with struggle, but that shouldn't be your default situation. You shouldn't like, oh yeah, I was raised this way by my mom because we lived in a bad situation. No, it shouldn't be like that. It should be, I was raised this way, but I would live comfortably enough where I could enjoy life and not always be living with a survival mindset. But you know, that's not everybody's reality. And I think because of that, now the entire world is at a spot where young boys, and I didn't even go into like how teaching young boys to be softer by default is bad, but it's like the whole thing with like, would you rather be a warrior in a garden or a gardener in a war? I feel like we should raise young men to be warriors in a garden. Like, you have the extra energy, you have the like you have the attention deficit. We shouldn't force you to not channel that extra energy. I think that's a thing that a lot of modern families are doing, because you know, like even though I was a kid that never grew up doing sports, honestly speaking, I feel like raising young boys to do sports and be athletic, or just to do something with their scattered brains in a physical way, will infinitely be a much more productive thing for young boys versus just teaching them, hey, sit down in class, study, shut the fuck up, don't move, and do everything the teacher tells you to do. Because what that creates a young boy who knows, hey, if I make me being independent and making an action only ends in bad things happening, so I should just listen to everyone else, because if I make a choice on my own, it's going to end up badly. That is basically what you're teaching young boys by telling them, hey, you need to be obedient, do everything your teacher says. But teaching them that, but also giving them the proper channels to use that said energy in a way where they feel independent, i.e. a sport, you know, working together with a team, but it's like individual decisions that end up to the end goal. You know, you're not just in a class, hey, this is input equals output. If you don't do the input the way I tell you to do the input, the output is wrong. That is the worst way to raise a little boy. But if you raise a little boy in terms of like, okay, you need to put an input, but you can make your own decisions, and based on the decisions you make your output either really good, really bad, or just good enough. But like, just, oh, do this or that, or no, you're not good enough. That's very detrimental to young boys, in my opinion. And I think to like make a even like more or less serious thing about this, to like make it into the more comedic sense I was talking about it, you notice in media or just in general now, where whenever it's like, for example, the way how women talk about men, it's kind of an echo of how men used to talk about women in the late 90s or like early 2000s. And for example, what I mean by this is like, you know how in the early 2000s to like late 90s, if a guy was out at the club or something and he was trying to hit on a girl, and the girl wasn't becoming to his thing, and she was like a little bit on the alternative side, you know, more on the, you know, the more progressive, independent, strong woman vibe, which is what almost every girl nowadays is. You realize how back then, whenever a girl had that vibe about her, 9 times out of 10 in media and just in general, people would be like, oh, I bet she's a fucking lesbian, or, you know, the word that rhymes with bike. Yeah, you'll see that a lot in the media. But nowadays, in the year of our Lord 2026, it seems like it's more regular, like more normal for a guy to be more on the, you know, progressive side again, or like more softer, or just more quote unquote sassy side. Like, see, like that, like the term sassy for guys is basically like calling a woman in 2005 a butch because she aggressively said no to your dances. But like now it's flipped now, and you know, if you're a guy who you don't do something for the sake of women, to please women in a certain capacity, they just call you the F slur, or a gay, or a baggot, you know. And I just think that's funny, because that was another reason why I decided to make this video, because I'm just like, yo, and like, yeah, I'm noticing that like used to be like, oh, that girl doesn't like me, I bet she's a lesbian. Now it's like, oh, that guy didn't do what I want him to do. What type of Batman thing that? I said Batman because YouTube don't know Jamaican slurs like that. And I can even moreover say, like, speaking of Jamaica, I recently went back to Jamaica back in October of 2025, spent some time with my family, my dad's side of the family, and some of the advice that I heard my dad gave my younger sisters down there sounds like advice that I should have gotten when I was their age. Because like, so his advice that he gave, or that he does give my sisters, and I see it in their personalities, they're like basically very outspoken, kind of on the, they're basically extroverts to a degree. Well, at least the older one. The younger one is more introverted, but she's still like more tomboyish than the older one. But it's his advice was, never let anyone make you smaller than you want to be. Be as big as you are. Don't shrink yourself for other people. I feel like that is advice that would be very, very beneficial for boys, because, you know, it's like, hey, you know, speak up, you know, you have an idea, you know, you shouldn't be afraid to talk about your idea, you know, you're a man, this is what you're supposed to do. Like, that is healthy advice. I think that's very healthy advice for little boys. But as a young black boy, they teach you, hey, you are bigger than other kids, you know, you might be seen as more aggressive, more older than you are, so you should be more meek, you should not express yourself, you know, your emotions, these emotions, sometimes you should just keep it in and not really let it out. You know, that's some type of advice, because, you know, it's like in the modern day, we teach young boys to make yourself smaller for the sake of other people, despite how big you are. And I think that's very bad advice, because if you're, think about it this way, if you're big and you take up a lot of space, and you're taught your entire life to not take up as much space, by default you are useless, because you are a object that is so big for the area, but your impact is so small. You're literally just taking up space but not really contributing much. And I think that is where men are today. Men have the capacity to do so much more, but because of how we're trained, it's like the flea inside of a jar. You know, you put a flea in a jar, it can only jump so high, and then it gets conditioned, the later generations, to never jump past that, even though within its genetics it can jump much higher. And for the opposite side, just so I don't let this video go on for past 20 minutes, because I know you guys have very short attention spans, in the inverse, women are taught at a very young age to be as big, as bold, and expressive as possible, take up as much space as possible. You know, you're a girl power this, feminine power that, which, yes, that is good advice. However, that is terrible advice if there's people that are bigger and stronger than you by default. Because if you're a small thing and you're told that you can do things well beyond your capabilities, and that you're just told your entire life, like, hey, you can do this, but it's only because you don't believe you can't do it, that is also very, very destructive. Because think about it this way, you are small, you can't do this action, but we tell you you can, and we tell you the reason why you can't do the action is because you don't believe in yourself enough. So even though you are ill-equipped from the very start, we tell you you have everything to do what you need to do, but you can't do it. You just, like, what does that do? You're just gonna become like, that's learned helplessness. But it's like a sick, twisted learned helplessness, because you're being told you can do it, but you can't. So you're basically constantly put in situations where you bite off more than you can chew. And yes, you might be able to do it, and you might actually be able to achieve it, but you weren't equipped with the proper things to do it. So you end up hurting yourself, or like you have to do a lot more to be able to do the thing that they tell you to do. And because of that, you're now calloused and more rough on the exterior, and then like now you're just a struggling woman for the rest of your life. Like, oh yeah, I went through this struggle, I went through that struggle, and I overcame it. Yes, your entire life is struggle, and if your entire life is struggle as a person who was never meant to struggle, you will forever struggle. But you see, the thing with men are meant to struggle, so when we struggle and succeed, we actually are able to at least enjoy the success we have, because we know, hey, I've been struggling my entire life, but I got the success. But if you're a person that was never meant to struggle like that, even when you do meet the success, you'll never feel successful, because you always think of the struggle that you went through, because that was not something you're supposed to go through by default. Anyways, let me know if this opened up your eyes. I didn't think I was gonna make this video as like educational or as thought-provoking as it came out, but you know, I guess this is what happens when you're not sober on the YouTube waves. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Tell me your thoughts on this entire topic. I don't even know what I'm gonna label this video anymore, but don't forget to catch me over on Twitch. I know I've been very sporadic in my streams. Life is life. College is ending for some people or whatever, but thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.